Hello, most welcome to 1768 of the series. We will continue with the article by Warren D. Goldfarb. Please give me a slab or hand me a slab. And we are presently at 272. Second paragraph is just finished, and we are starting to get into the zest of it, the kernel. We are not really there, so it's a lot of preparation to get to the real task of the problem. But one question that's stuck so far, I understood, is that can the order I want a slab sort of be disjunct or separable from some sort of naming process? Is that possible? So naming could be something different, and the want for the slab, or that the slab is entering in an action of sorts, it's participating. Could those things be different in some way, so that there is a separable naming process? Not much so far in my thinking development, but let's see what happens now. I think I go back one paragraph just to make absolutely sure that the point gets through. Maybe two paragraphs. No, I think one will do the trick. Hence, nothing conclusive emerges from the worries about the builders. Again, I take this to be intentional. Sorry. The absence of a definite answer is also hinted in paragraph 360. We say only a human being, and what is like one, that it thinks. The hint comes from the obviously intentional vagueness of like. We are then meant to retain a certain uneasiness, a sense of oddity about reading of the builder's language, in denying the builders anything else but these calls. We have denied them so much that we are reluctant to call the calls names. To say here slab names slabs is just to say that A calls out slab and B brings a slab. All is open to view. Because of this simplicity, we want to say that this is perhaps like a name, but really it is not one, or not one in the real sense. The sense in which we have names in our language. Stripped of the ideology that leads to the blunt assertion, this is not language. The reluctance itself is a datum. This reluctance reflects back on what I've said about paragraph 1. As we've seen, under reading 1, there's no question about the word-for-word accuracy of Augustine's remarks. Under reading 2, however, we are uneasy and hesitate to apply the notion of naming some object, as well as presumably those of wishing to point a thing out, state of mind, and the like. What creates the reluctance, the difference between the two readings, is the abrogation of the rest of language. This suggests that our everyday applications of these notions presuppose the surroundings provided by the rest of language. Given that the surroundings are in place, we can use these notions without reservation to mark out various distinctions. When the surroundings are removed, the notions no longer operate quite rightly. Thus, the relation of paragraph 2 to Augustine's remarks is far from straightforward. Wittgenstein's note that the builders provide a case for which the description given by Augustine is correct has a double edge. Augustine's remarks can be trivial if we take the notions that figure in it to be operating locally. The trouble comes when we segment the description, that is, when we take naming, wishing to point, and so on, as if they picked out isolatable phenomena. Whose character can be given independently of any surrounding structure. This idea of surroundings is connected to why the double aspect of Augustine's remarks arises in philosophical contexts. To take the notions of Augustine invokes as figuring in a general account of language is to take them as picking out particular phenomena that are crucially, perhaps foundationally, at stake in the operation of language. These phenomena in and of themselves then become the focus of theorizing. Thus, for example, in paragraph 6, Wittgenstein talks of the connection between word and thing. His remarks are intended not to deny that attributions of reference to word make sense, but rather to expose a slide that results in giving the word-thing connection a special place underlying the use of language as the essential item in the explanation of understanding. When this sort of thing happens, the notions are construed as operating on their own, independently of the rest of the structure. For it is they that ground the structure. Our considerations about paragraph 2 thus suggest that what is involved in the undertaking such general accounts is already a large move. In his investigations of the notions that can play a role here, Wittgenstein intends to give this altogether too broad characterization content by teasing out the ways in which these notions are illicitly taken as separable when exploited for certain ends. Now, one lesson we are to learn from Wittgenstein is that there is no accurate general characterization how one can go wrong. We can expect no systematic account on what it is to treat notions in isolation from the surroundings that ordinarily give them life. Further insight can be gained only by detailed examination of cases. I shall consider one such examination, that in paragraphs 19 to 20, which poses the question of how words are meant. In paragraphs 19 and 20, Wittgenstein examines what I have called the notion of the animation of language by thought, by looking at the relations among the builders, called Slab. Our command, Slab, and our sentence, bring me a slab. Here he is using our hesitations regarding the language of paragraph 2 to raise questions about our language, and in particular about what our meaning, our words, consists in. It disperses the fog to consider the builders, not because such primitive languages settle anything directly, but because they force certain questions back on us. The things the interlocutor says in these sections have a very commonplace a. Our order Slab is elliptical for bring me a slab. When I say slab, I mean bring me a slab. When I say slab, I want that you bring me a slab, and so on. Wittgenstein does not deny these commonplaces, but seeks to show that the interlocutor, in taking them to evidence something deep about language, is putting them on a burden they cannot bear. The interlocutor starts by claiming that the builder's call is not our command, since our command is elliptical for bring me a slab. He is trying to locate our uneasiness with the builders in something specific about their calls as opposed to our sentences. That is something finer than the overarching fact that the builders' lives, after all, different from ours. Wittgenstein agrees that our one-word command is elliptical, as it surely is. But how does this humdrum observation show a difference between it and the builder's call? The interlocutor responds that the conclusion follows simply because the builder's language does not contain the longer sentence. The interlocutor must then be construing the ellipticality of our command slab for bring me a slab to imply that the function of the former is parasitic on that of the latter. He conceives of our one-word command as a conventionally shortened form of the real sentence. Bring me a slab. Something is left out in the former, and we are in some way more accurate when we put it back in by filling in the ellipses. He is claiming that any account of what we do with a shortened sentence must go by way of the longer one. Our command slab can function as it does because it is at bottom the longer sentence. The interlocutor here is headed towards a philosophical theory of language. Agreement with his characterization of the relation between the shorter and longer sentences will rapidly drive towards the idea of there being a full sense of our sentences, or a proposition, as some have put it. Versus what is obtained when all of the ellipses have been filled in. To block this drive at the start, Wittgenstein will call our attention to the ways in which the notion of ellipticality, when construed in this way, is groundless. Thus he asks, with an innocent air, why don't we take the one-word command as the basic form and the longer sentence to be conventionally lengthened? If we do this, there's no bar to identifying the builder's call with our command. Why is the longest sentence to be taken as the standard? The interlocutor answers that it is because you really mean the longer sentence when you utter the shorter sentence. Again, in one tone of voice, this is a triviality. The interlocutor, however, is in effect emphasizing really and is thereby voicing the deep-seated conviction that the longer sentence has some sort of priority. He is construing really meaning as a relation to something. The something here is the longer sentence as opposed to the shorter. In the philosophical, not so long run, that something turns out to be the full sense or the thought in its entirety, which may well go beyond the sentence as uttered. To point out the need for some support for taking such talk of really meaning as showing that one form of the sentence is more basic than the other. Wittgenstein dismissively asks, "Do you say the unshortened sentence to yourself?" The answer is, of course, no. All that can be concluded is that the two sentences mean the same, and that the shorter one is, well, shorter. Wittgenstein even asks, why should I not say when he says slab, he means slab? Now, we normally do not say such things. Perhaps then we should pause at this question. For it suggests that the interlocutor could, although he does not point out the following. We say, when he says slab, he means bring me a slab, but not when he says slab, he means slab. Nor do we say, when he says, bring me the slab, he means slab. Surely, this shows that the longer sentence is a more accurate locus of meaning. But how does this show that? We say, when he says X, he means Y, in response to a question, when something about the utterance is unclear. It is hard to imagine a case in which we would be unclear about bring me a slab, yet would have understood had slab been said. Hence, the shorter sentence is not in general useful for explaining the longer. This is an innocent observation, but the interlocutor concludes that the shorter sentence depends on the longer one. Of course, there's a jump here that amounts to an implicit adoption of an in-choate conception of full sense. For the full sense represents the complete explanation of meaning, the one that handles any unclarity that could possibly arise. the assumption of such a final resting point provides a notion of a direction of analysis. It is this notion that founds the interlocutor's claim that "bring me a slab" is more basic than slab. Now, Wittgenstein criticizes this conception in many ways. He challenges the idea of complete explanation and all possible unclarities, and denies that questions and doubts elicit something already there, somehow in the original sentence. These criticisms, however, need not to be rehearsed here, for the present task is to show that the observations we make about meaning, when we stick to the descriptive level, do not by themselves substantiate the interlocutor's claims. If these claims are substantiated only when we import a conception of full sense or something totemant to it, a philosophical picture of the essence of language is ever there were one, then that is enough. Clearly, no one Wittgensteinian attack of the sort I am discussing could be conclusive. A defender of the conception under attack can, at each juncture, claim that something else, not the putative fact under consideration, furnishes its true support. But enough cases like this will surely make these disavowals ring hollow. In any case, the interlocutor of paragraph 19 does not invoke features of how we explain what we mean. He takes a different tack. To show that something about the one-word command can be gotten at only via the four-word one, the interlocutor says, when I call Slab, then what I want is that he should bring me a slab. Again, Wittgenstein agrees to the commonplace but challenges its efficacy. The interlocutor is speaking as if the wanting had isolatable parts corresponding to the longer sentence. He passes from a certain description of the speaker's desires to something about the real sentence. But what is the justification for this move? Note, by the way, that we can equally well say, when I say slab, I want a slab. Or when I say slab, I want him to obey the command slab. The various ways we can transform the description here constitute no evidence for taking one sentence rather than the other as basic. In trying to base this claim on what the utterer of slab wants, the interlocutor is taking there to be an object of wanting versus a state of affairs that is wanted and that has a specific character given by canonical verbal description. Wittgenstein asks for the grounds for such a construal of the wanting. The question with which Wittgenstein concludes paragraph 19 suggests that the construal is grounded only if the utterer of Slab in some sense thinks the longer sentence. Clearly, however, no such conscious thought is, in general, present. Hence, the construal either is groundless or else relies upon some notion of unconscious or implicit thought. And in the latter case, the interlocutor is simply presupposing what he needs to substantiate. He must support the idea that the one-word command depends on the four-word command. But to assert that unconscious or implicit thought of the longest sentence always occurs is already to assume that "bring me a slab" is a more accurate expression of the elliptical command slab. It is to assume that our operations with slab are mediated by some more basic relation to "bring me a slab." Yet, if we cannot rely on the basic level of language to anchor what we mean, what it is to mean, bring me a slab itself, that is to mean the longer form. In paragraph 20, the interlocutor suggests a plausible answer. It is to use the sentence in contrast with other sentences that share some of these words, like bring him a slab, bring me a pillar, etc. I shall call these other sentences variants. The interlocutor's suggestion may seem obviously right, but it can give rise to yet another philosophical conception. That the meaning of the sentence is constructed out of something specific located in each word, something that can be gleaned from contrast with those variants in which the word alone is replaced. And that tells what is done in using just this word as opposed to the alternatives. It is not far to the idea that we understand the sentence by grasping its constituents and seeing how they are combined. However, when using a sentence in contrast to its variants, is taken to ground the notion of how we mean a sentence, it appears that to use a sentence in contrast is to perform an act that explains the speaker's uttering that sentence. Here, as before, Wittgenstein notes that no introspectable feature of mental life support such a localization of using it in contrast in a particular act. The absence of such introspectibilia highlights the jump that has been made in ascribing a certain character to the otherwise unobjectionable notion of using in contrast, for it indicates that this ascription rests on no facts whatsoever. Wittgenstein adduces the following further considerations to undermine the ascription. The usual talk surrounding particular acts is inapplicable. Questions like, do all the variants enter into the act? And when does it happen? Seems completely inappropriate. Put a little pause there. I think so. It's about, can it be simplified beyond a certain level? Wittgenstein then points out that we say we use the sentence in contrast because our language contains the variance. It is, of course, a truism that we could not use a sentence in contrast to others if the others were not available. Wittgenstein means more, however. To say one uses the sentence in contrast to the variance is to say no more than that the language contains this variance, and when one utters the given sentence, one is not uttering the variance. The whole content of our talk of using a sentence in contrast lies in the availability of alternatives in our language. There's no particular act which is the using in contrast, except for the utterance of the sentence itself. And there I seem fit to end 1768. And just when now it's getting interesting, we'll need to continue next time. I say thank you very much and have a very pleasant morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Bye bye.